To discuss India's economic and monetary policy outlook, I'm joined by a very special voice from India. I'm joined by the Honorable Governor of the Reserve Bank of India, Mr. Shaktikanta Das, in his first TV interview to an international business channel since he took office in December 2018. So it's great to have you on the show. Thank you very much, Governor, for joining us for the CNBC exclusive.
Thank you.
So I would like to start off by understanding your growth outlook for India. Post the deadly COVID wave, which was very, very unfortunate for the country, RBI's growth forecast stands at 9.5% for FY 2022, and for Q1 the projection is 21.4%. What is your overall assessment of this growth outlook and the balance of risks around this forecast?
You see, the forecast which we have given now, 9.5%, I think it is quite appropriate for the current year. The first quarter growth this year of 21% is mainly because of the base effect of last year when India recorded minus 24.4 or something in that order. But nonetheless, the economic activities, they gained momentum in the first quarter of this year. And of course, which got subsequently dented by the onset of the second wave of the pandemic. And so far as we are concerned, I think we see revival of activity in various sectors now of the economy, manufacturing and other sectors, even in service sectors, that is non-contact intensive service sectors is also reviving well. It's the contact intensive service sector and a few other services which are affected. In manufacturing, it is the small and medium units which are yet to sort of recover fully. So broadly, therefore, the 9.5% which we have projected, in fact, our earlier projection was 10.5% for the current year. We moderated it slightly to 9.5%, taking into account the impact of the second wave. And I think at this point of time, I would like to say that our assessment of 9.5% should hold good for the current year.
And for next year, sir, FY 23, what is the outlook?
No, normally we don't give the outlook for next year. We have given the outlook, I think, for the first quarter of next year, that is already given. And so going forward, we will have to see, I think maybe after September, depending on how the first wave of pandemic, what has been the impact of the second wave of the pandemic on the first half of this year, we will be in a far better position to assess the overall impact.
Governor, the MPC, in an official statement, has decided to continue with the accommodative stance as long as necessary to revive and sustain growth on a durable basis and continue to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the economy while ensuring that inflation remains within the tight target range going forward. This is, of course, the official statement of the MPC in terms of its forward guidance. How should one interpret this guidance? What qualifies as durable growth sustained over what period of time?
Let me give first, let me give a little bit of the background. Now, when the COVID pandemic, when the COVID pandemic started towards the middle of March last year, and ever since that time, we have gone through very extremely uncertain conditions. The dent on global economy and the dent on Indian economy have been severe. RBI's effort and the effort of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank of India has been, first, it switched over to an accommodative stance, reduced the rates, the policy rates, and the effort was to create congenial financial conditions in which the economy can come back to normalcy. And we have made every possible endeavor. In fact, we have taken about 100-odd measures since March last year to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 on the economy. So our effort, our endeavor has been to nurture the economy by providing congenial financial conditions, by supporting the economy through various policy measures. Monetary, regulatory, and regulatory policy included some relaxations with regard to the banking sector and other aspects of the financial sector. So our effort has been to nurture the recovery process. And it is satisfying to note that the economy and all activities have responded well to the impulses which were generated from the central bank. Now we are in a situation where the inflation seems to be spiking up. It has, in fact, remained upwards of 5%. In between, it went exceeded 6%. but now it has come below 6%, which is the upper band. So at this point of time, we are watching the revival of the economic activity. There is still uncertainty prevailing around the pandemic. Yeah. Today morning, I was looking at the new cases in India, and they have again inched up to about 46,000 new cases in India, compared to about 40,000, or between, it was ranging between 30 to 40,000 new cases almost on a daily basis. But today it is 46,000, and some parts of India are showing increasing, increase in the infections. What impact that's going to have on the economic activity, that is something to be assessed. So once we are convinced that the economic recovery process, which is, as I have said a couple of days earlier, the recovery process, which is now delicately poised, once we are convinced that it shows, once the economic revival of economic activity shows signs of durability, signs of sustainability, I think that should be an appropriate time for the Reserve Bank or for the monetary policy to think of or perhaps consider a change in course.
So the pandemic has left some scars in certain pockets of India. India's informal sector that employs 80% of India's labor force and produces 50% of GDP. The SME sector that you touched upon. What more can the RBI do to help heal those scars?
You see, so far as the SME sector is concerned, we have, during the course of the pandemic, we have announced several resolution, that is restructuring packages for the MSMEs, and many, number of MSMEs have restructured themselves. And not only that, we have also, through the process of this targeted long-term repo operations, that is TLTRO as we call it, we have targeted to the MSME sector. We provided refinance facilities, we provided liquidity to the SIDBI, that is the Small Industries Development Bank of India. We provided liquidity to the SIDBI, to the NABARD, and to the National Housing Bank to support the MSME sector and the smaller NBFCs and the microfinancial institutions, which in turn support the small and medium enterprises and the informal sector. So therefore, we have taken a number of measures. The government on its part has also introduced several fiscal support measures. I think there is a scheme which they are calling it the Swanidhi, where the targeted group is the informal sectors, the roadside vendors and others. For that scheme also, in fact, a couple of days ago, we have now decided to earmark a certain portion of our the Payment Infrastructure Fund, that is PIDF, which we set up, which we have created. We have decided to allocate a certain portion of our, the Payment Infrastructure Development Fund to give, handheld payment devices, to the informal sector, so that they are able to do transactions quickly. So far as the MSME sector, so far as the informal sector is concerned, we are operating through the NBFCs, we are operating through the banks, and for the SME sector in particular, we have provided restructuring packages, and many of them have already restructured. In fact, when the second wave started, on 5th of May, we again announced another package for the SME sector, and that is still under implementation.
Sure. So has consumption recovery also been scarred? Has that been derailed as household debt rises and savings go down? What kind of contribution can we expect from this sector, given that private consumption is nearly 60% of the economy?
You see, consumption was dented, no doubt on that. And the aggregate demand is still nowhere near normal. And today we are getting, big support for the aggregate demand from the export sector because of, faster revival in developed economies. I think the external sector today, the external demand looks much stronger than it was. So the export sector of India is doing extremely well, and that is adding to the aggregate demand. Now, so far as domestic consumption is concerned, the government consumption expenditure has been the prime mover for the revival process. Private consumption expenditure is gradually picking up. So going forward, I think once the huge allocation which government has made for the infrastructure and other sectors, and with government expenditure kicking in a big way, which it is indeed doing so at the moment. We would expect the private consumption expenditure also to pick up. In fact, some of the indicators like the sale of fast-moving consumer goods or consumer durable sales, if you look at it, the sales are showing considerable amount of improvement. So by the end of the year, I would expect consumer demand to have increased substantially over the current levels or over the levels where the COVID impact took them down.
Okay, that's heartening to hear. How real, sir, is the risk of stagflation for India? Because it does come up in conversations. And, when we talk about the US economy's outlook as well, that's a scenario that's being worked with. How real is the risk of stagflation for India?
No, I don't think India, in the context of India, I would not agree, and I would not, put stagflation as an issue on the table for discussion in the context of India. And I'll explain why. Now, so far as inflation is concerned, as it has been stated in our monetary policy statement, it has, most of the impulses of inflation appear at this point of time to be one-off factors, or as some people like to describe it, transitory. Our inflation forecast shows that in the third quarter of this year, the inflation will moderate. Now, take the example of last year. Last year in September and October, the inflation, in fact, crossed 7%. Now, that time there was worry all around, but the MPC assessed that the inflation will moderate going forward, and the inflation, in fact, did moderate and came very close to 4% in the first quarter of this calendar year. That is fourth quarter, January to March quarter of this year, of this calendar year. Now, so inflation moderated. At this point of time also, we feel that the inflation will moderate going forward. And the current inflation and the inflation momentum is driven primarily by supply side factors. And the supply side factors are correcting themselves. The concerned authorities are also taking necessary steps. We are in constant discussion with the government and other authorities so that necessary steps are taken, because the supply side measures, whatever corrections need to be taken or can be taken, have to be taken by people who control them. RBI doesn't control the supply side factors. So we expect the inflation to moderate. We expect the supply side factors to even out going forward. The current inflation looks transitory, and RBI remains fully conscious of its inflation, of its responsibility to anchor inflation expectations. So therefore, inflation going forward, RBI will ensure that the inflation does not, does not sort of become uncontrollable. It will be dealt with. And so far as growth is concerned, as I have explained, the economic revival is taking place. In fact, the revival process was far stronger in the month of, January, February, and March, this year. But thereafter, the second wave again pulled it down. But now it is again recovering. So therefore, the possibility of a stagflation is, I do not foresee such a possibility.
Right, sir. You think of inflation as transitory, Governor, but as recovery takes shape and the output gap closes, wouldn't that put pressure on the demand side of inflation as well? I mean, isn't there the risk of a swift overshoot, and are you prepared for that?
No, you see, it's like this. Even at the moment, capacity utilization is nowhere near the pre-pandemic levels. I was looking at the data released a few days ago. Some 400 odd sectors of 7 sectors for which data has been released. Out of that, almost 250 sectors, I'm talking about industrial sectors, where the capacity utilization is still far below. It is about, so 50% of, in the 50% of the sectors, the capacity utilization is falling short of their normal levels. So there is a gap in capacity utilization. There is a slack in the economy. Demand remains, aggregate demand still has a lot of gap to fill up. And we are constantly monitoring the situation, and we will act at the appropriate time. At the current juncture, we feel that appropriate time has not come. I very strongly feel that not only me, but I think the MPC also feels, the MPC does feel, that we should allow the supply side factors to correct themselves. We should allow the authorities to also take necessary corrective measures in respect of the supply side factors and allow that to play out, and then see how it, going forward, how the picture works out.
When would time be appropriate, sir?
Well, that I cannot spell out at this point of time. I mean, we are watchful of all the incoming data on the growth front, on inflation front, and we will, it all depends. I told you two things. Number one, we are watchful of how the supply side factors are correcting themselves. Number two, we are also watchful of how the growth and the revival process is picking up. And once we are convinced that the revival process has taken certain routes and it looks sustainable, durable, and once, we have to also factor in the inflation scenario prevailing at that particular time. Sure. So it depends on the evolving macroeconomic situation. I would not like to sort of preempt what the MPC should do.
Right, so I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I spoke to a lot of analysts before this interview, and the overarching view seems to be that the RBI's policy tolerance for inflation has gone up. Has it?
Yes, I think I have said it also. I have said it myself, and the MPC statement itself has said it. You see, we have an inflation target of 4%, but we have a range of 2 to 6%. Inflation will be treated as, inflation targeting will be treated as a failure if it exceeds or if it goes beyond the range of 2 to 6% for three consecutive quarters. Now, the beauty of the flexible inflation targeting framework is that in situations of extreme stress, in extraordinary situation like we are confronted for the last 1.5 years, in situations like this, it is the range of 2 to 6%, which gives flexibility to the Monetary Policy Committee to also focus on the growth requirements of the economy. If you read the law carefully, it says that the inflation, RBI will be responsible for inflation targeting at 4%, keeping in mind the objectives of the growth. So the flexible inflation targeting gives that elbow room, gives that space to MPC to respond to extreme stress situations that we are confronted with today. And also, monetary policy, inflation targeting has to be always forward-looking. We have to look forward how the inflation curve is likely to play out. It's a forward-looking policy, so it has to respond to what is our expectation from the coming quarters or from the coming months.
Sure, sir. Let's move forward and discuss your rate outlook, your outlook on interest rates as far as India is concerned. The recent MPC minutes, Governor, showed that there was one dissent by Mr. Jayant Verma, who believes it is time to move away from accommodative policy. There is the expectation that in October, the MPC would be further divided on this issue. What is your thinking on this front?
No, we will see. As I said, it will depend on the evolving macroeconomic situation. And this is not the first time that there is a difference of opinion in the MPC. In fact, right through the, if you see right through the pandemic or even earlier, there have been situations where the MPC decision has been, MPC decisions have been taken with a majority of 4:2. So this is not the first time that, there is a difference of opinion. Individual members have also expressed their views, and the minutes are already available in the public domain. And what would be our approach in October? That will depend on the evolving macroeconomic conditions.
So given the Fed's communication of its tapering plans and what we've seen from other central banks around the world, isn't now a good time for the RBI to start preparing the markets, investors, communicating on what's to come and when, indicating a timeline for policy normalization?
No, as I have said, we will act at the appropriate time when we consider that the time is appropriate. The RBI will be second to none before doing it. As I said, I'm repeating, we are fully conscious of our responsibility with regard to the inflation. But this is not the appropriate moment. We will wait for the evolving macroeconomic conditions and then respond appropriately. And let me also mention, since you referred to the US Fed, we do keep a very close watch on the policy actions, on the monetary policy actions of the central banks of advanced economies, and in particular the US Fed, that has impact on our, on our domestic situation. But our monetary policy is primarily and principally determined by domestic macroeconomic conditions.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll come to that, sir, in a bit, especially, the discussion around the tapering risk, what that means for India. Aside of the timing issue, let's keep the timing issue on one side. What about the policy normalization sequence outside of the benchmark interest rate? Whether it's a reverse repo rate hike, whether it's withdrawing liquidity, excess liquidity in the system, or also looking at a variable reverse repo issuance. What will policy normalization sequence be? And can you share your thought process on that?
No, I mean, I would not like to sort of give out our internal thinking. And in any case, these are aspects which are constantly and at regular intervals analyzed internally in RBI. Going forward, what are the policy responses going to be? And let us also not let us also not presuppose that, we have made up our mind for a reversal, and therefore we should start planning for its sequencing. We keep all our options open. We are extremely watchful. We are very, closely watchful of the evolving situation. We consider all policy options. When you say that what will be the sequencing, we are assuming that RBI has made up its mind to reverse its monetary policy. RBI meaning, the internal thinking and the analytical departments, or the governor at governor's level. So let's not assume that it has been decided by RBI to reverse the policies, and therefore we should plan sequencing. Having said that, we plan all possible aspects. We plan if there's a faster growth, what is to be done. If growth gets delayed, what is to be done. If there is a third wave and the impact is of this magnitude, what should be our, what should be our response? If the inflation, in fact, there is a school of thought which does strongly believe that inflation in India has already peaked, and henceforth it will only moderate. Now, whether it has reached the peak, I have not said so, but there are others who have said so. So therefore, supposing the inflation considerably moderates, then naturally the timing of any change in course in the monetary policy will get impacted by that. It will get further postponed. So therefore, we are very watchful of the evolving situation, evolving macroeconomic conditions, and again and again repeating these macroeconomic conditions, because that really describes our real, the way we look at things. We sort of use various permutations and combinations and look at all possible options under various hypothetical situations, should they turn out to be true.
But and this is just my final question on this issue, sir, then I'll move on. But there would not be an element of surprise coming in from the RBI, sir, because I hear you and you're in wait and watch mode. But when I look at professional forecasters, they are already penciling in the first rate hike for India in the first quarter, the first half of 2022. And so I just want to understand how this will work.
You see, throughout the pandemic, we have surprised, the RBI has surprised the market in a positive sense by announcing, measures from time to time and responding to the evolving challenges very proactively. So the surprise has been throughout the pandemic has been very pleasant surprise for the market. We are fully conscious, and we will not try to give any surprises which are, which takes we would not like to give any surprise which takes the market by surprise. We will, our action, as I have said earlier, and I would like to repeat, all our action will be calibrated. I mean, they will be well timed, they will be cautious, and they will be well calibrated, keeping in mind aspects like what you are mentioning. We don't want to give any sudden shock or any sudden surprise to the markets.
All right. So in fact, I must also say that all the analysts I've spoken to have lauded you for your efforts through the COVID-19 pandemic, sir, calling you the unsung hero in terms of all the measures that you've put in place in helping the economy survive through this historic crisis. To the external sector, sir, as a source of funding, what is the timeline for India's inclusion on the global bond indices?
You see, we have been into, both RBI and the government. We are working very closely with, the bond index providers, and there are some, there are some issues of, there are some issues relating to capital account convertibility. Now, the bond index entities which provide bond index, they have a certain way of looking at capital account convertibility. Yes, India is not fully convertible in the capital account. But having said that, India is almost there. I mean, there are no restrictions on FDI, ODI. There are no restrictions, subject to, of course, there are certain overall caps with regard to FPI inflows. But on outflows, there are no restrictions. In fact, in terms of liquidity, the GSEC market of India is one of the most liquid, with no restrictions on outflow of funds. Our stock markets also do not have any restriction on outflow of funds. So whether it is FDI, or whether it is outward direct investment, or outward direct investment is not relevant here, but whether it is incoming foreign direct investment or it is incoming foreign portfolio investment, the regime has been liberalized to a great extent. So we are engaged with these bond index providers to convince them that although technically India is not fully convertible in the capital account, India has no artificial or other kind of restrictions which impedes or which restricts free flow or free movement of capital both ways. So it is a process of convincing them. And I think going forward, we should see some traction. Let us see, I think maybe in the next few months.
Yeah, it's important to actually.
Because I'm not deciding. They are deciding.
True.
But we are engaged.
No, I understand.
Yeah, and it's necessary for, it's necessary for both, for us and for them to develop that understanding. And we are trying to explain to them and convince them that indeed, technically we may not be convertible in the capital account, but for all practical purposes, India has a very, very liberalized capital account regime.
Yeah, and it's an important development for fixed income investors watching India. How are you preparing for the tapering risks? I know that the current account situation is favorable for India. The forex situation looks very comfortable. But just in terms of managing the orderliness of the event going in and out, in terms of whether or not it can lead to potential outflows, knee-jerk potential outflows, the rate differential story also, could that lead and drive outflows from India? Given that just this morning we heard the BOK hike rates. And so how are you thinking about the world tightening and your position from that standpoint?
I missed out the first part of that, your question. There was some, it was not audible. So can you just repeat that and edit this portion? I mean, you can do that.
Sure, sir. I'll repeat that.
Repeat the question.
How are you preparing for the tapering risk to make it orderly so that the impact on India is minimum?
You see, our forex reserves are very robust at the moment. It's about 619 billion US dollars, which is an all-time high. So we do not expect to see the kind of the kind of impact that the taper tantrum of 2013 produced. I think India is fairly insulated thanks to our huge amount of forex reserves. We are far better placed today to deal with any possible impact of a spillover of US policy reversal. And US Fed has also time and again, I think they have time and again emphasized, and they are giving enough of forward guidance. It's not as if they're going to do it tomorrow. Of course, tonight there is a lecture. So it's not as if they are going to do it right away. At the moment, there is an opinion. The broad opinion is that perhaps in 23, or some members are talking of, perhaps in 22. Now, so we'll have to see how they decide. And I think the forward guidance, I think this is one of the positive outcomes of the experience of all central banks during the taper tantrum. The forward guidance given by the US Fed is extremely important for global economy, for global monetary policy stance across central banks. So the taper tantrum created a situation where there was a sudden surprise pronouncement which came from the Fed, but it didn't materialize eventually. But it created a huge amount of ripples. This time, the US Fed, as far as I understand, and as I think everybody agrees on that point, I think they're also very conscious to give enough forward guidance to the global markets and to other central banks. So we expect US to give enough advance notice. And in any case, so far as India is concerned, our forex reserves provide that kind of buffer, which should should insulate to the maximum extent possible any impact of spillover on our situation.
So we had the Bank of Korea today announce its first rate hike. Brazil has gotten out of the gate. Russia has done so as well. As some of the key central banks, outside of the Fed, of course, look at an exit policy, are you concerned about capital outflow pressure because of rate differentials?
No. In fact, the inflows are at the moment, the capital inflows into India are continuing to be very steady. And you would have seen the rupee has indeed strengthened, appreciated over the last few weeks. And there is constant inflow. Recently, we had a spate of IPOs in the domestic market, and that led to a lot of inflow of foreign currency, particularly dollars, into India. And the bulk of the inflow that is happening in India today is in FDI, which is of durable nature. So therefore, I do not see. Of course, the inflows may moderate to some extent. I don't know, but inflow remains steady. And most of the inflow is coming into FDI for a complexity of factors. I'm not going into that. So we are getting large FDI inflows, which should continue to be steady.
Okay. So on fiscal support, will the GSAP program, which is the Government Securities Acquisition Program, run after September to support the bond market, or will inflation risks mean that the RBI steps back on bond purchases?
You see, the current GSAP program is up to 30th of, up to the end of September. Now, what will be our approach? I think we will be able to, I think you have to wait for the next monetary policy statement, which is due, I think, in the first week of October. So before that, and there is still 1.5 months, 1 month and 10 days to go. So we'll remain watchful, and we will decide and announce at that time. Not possible for me to prejudge as this issue at this point, because frankly, we have not decided. Decided. It will depend on so many developments and factors, how it plays out in the next 30 or 40 days.
Sure, sir. One question on the banks, not just in terms of accelerating credit creation, sir, and what more can be done on that front, but also managing asset quality pressures. What can you tell us about the state of the banks? Because some of those moratoriums are expiring at a time when businesses are still struggling with cash flow pressure. You
see, the moratorium have ended. In fact, the RBI gave the moratorium for 6 months, which ended in August. Then the Supreme Court ordered an asset classification standstill, which ended on, I think, in the 3rd week of March. So there is no moratorium prevailing. And the restructuring, the resolution schemes which we had announced, they have all concluded, ended on 30th of June, except the MSME sector, where we announced some fresh measures on 5th of May. That is still in operation, but that will not have a large impact on the banking sector. Now, India entered into the pandemic, our banking sector entered into the pandemic in a far better position than what was the situation, 2 years or 3 years prior to that. If you look at the numbers on 31st March or 30th of June, I have the figures up to 30th of June. In fact, at the aggregate level, the CRAR of the CRAR of scheduled commercial banks is about 16%. The provision coverage ratio of the scheduled commercial banks at the aggregate level, if I remember correctly, is about 68%. And the GNPA on 30th of June was 7.5%. We have in our financial stability report given certain projections about NPA situation. We are quite confident at this point of time that the outlook with regard to non-performing assets or the bad assets are within manageable limits. So the Indian banking sector looks looks stable at the moment. The outlook also looks stable. Deposits, bank deposits have been growing at the rate of 10% over the last 1 year. In fact, year on year, the latest data shows that bank deposits have grown by 10%. Now, this is at the aggregate level, but yes, within that, there could be some stress in one or two institutions, which we have, as I have said elsewhere earlier, we have really tightened and improved our supervision process. So we exactly know where is the problem, and constantly our teams are engaged with the management of those banks to take necessary corrective measures. I'll just give one example. We are just not looking at the overall broad numbers or the financial parameters of the banks. The figures I mentioned, that is the NPA and all that, the non-performing assets, the CRAR and all that. We are also looking at the business models. We are also looking at the emerging stress in certain sectors in the portfolio of the banks. Whenever we find that a bank is overexposing itself to a particular sector or the stress in a particular sector is increasing, we immediately interact with the bank and bring it to their notice that this is one area of major concern for us, and the management of the bank should address this area and should take necessary corrective measures. So it's a constant process which goes on. Aggregate level banking sector looks very stable at the aggregate level. At the individual entity level, there may be problems in one or two entities, but there also we are fairly confident that we are engaged with the management of those banks and we will be able to deal with them.
All right, sir, we are moving towards the end of the interview. I just have a couple more questions for you. The RBI is planning on introducing a digital currency in a phased manner. Could you share some more details on when we can expect the pilot test to begin and how much time for the rollout?
You see, it was articulated earlier that by, let's say, end of the year, that is by December or so, we should be able to start some kind of a pilot exercise. And we are being extremely careful about it because it's completely a new product, not just for RBI, but globally. So the first is the security of the currency, the security of the digital currency and its integrity. That is very important. The possibility of cloning, all that should be avoided. What impact it will produce on the financial sector, what impact it will have on the monetary policy, what impact it will have on currency in circulation. We are examining all those aspects. We are working on our teams are also working on the technology. We have a choice of between it could digital, distributed ledger technology, DLT, or centralized ledger. There are also central banks which are starting the exercise at the wholesale level and then going into retail. Exactly. We are examining that aspect also, whether we should adopt wholesale and sequentially go to retail later on, or we should also start in a localized area, the retail plus the wholesale. Various options are under examination, and whether the currency should be issued directly by the central bank or we should issue it through the banking system. That is also under examination. But teams are working. I think by the end of the year, we would be in a position perhaps to start our first trials.
Well, we wish you the very best because that's a growing debate around the world in terms of rolling out CBDCs at a time when there is so much happening by way of increasing adoption for cryptos. Governor, how are you thinking about regulation for cryptos? We were just touch base actually with Bank Indonesia governor a few days ago, talking about the regulatory environment. And Indonesia, of course, is thinking about a crypto trading tax. So what shape and form could regulation look like for cryptos in India, where also adoption is growing?
You see, you are referring to private crypto. Now, on private crypto, we have in Reserve Bank, we have major concerns around the private crypto from the point of view of financial stability. There are huge amount of risks. There are impact on the aspect of financial stability, and we have shared our concern with the government. So the government will take the necessary policy decision in that regard. So far as the technology of crypto is concerned, so far blockchain or DLT, distributed ledger technology is concerned, that's a different thing altogether. Private I mean, the technology of blockchain, the DLT can grow and will grow irrespective of private crypto. This technology does not need a private crypto currency to, the technology doesn't need a private cryptocurrency to grow. The technology can grow on its own. In fact, it is already being used by the various, by various corporates in India, and we are also working on that. So therefore, on private cryptocurrencies, we have major concerns, and because it has impact on financial stability, and I am not the only central bank governor talking about it. I think many other central bank governors have also talked about it. The Bank of England, even US Fed, and several other central bank governors have talked about it.
But so, by when can we see a regulatory framework being put in place in this regard? And I'll tell you why I'm asking you this is because we just came across a report that highlighted how India and Vietnam saw the highest amount or the most significant adoption of cryptos through the course of the last 18 months. And so clearly this product is moving very quickly, not just in trading circles, but also in the real economy.
It's for the government to decide. We have shared our viewpoint with the government. It is for the government to decide, and I think it is under consideration in the government, so they will decide.
Okay. So the world has seen a government step up fiscal policy measures to support monetary policy in this next leg of the pandemic. Is that what we can expect from India as well, where the RBI has done its bit and now the onus is on the government to stimulate growth?
Well, I cannot speak for the government, surely. The government has announced several packages of fiscal relief during this, during the last 1.5 years. And whenever we have any thoughts with regard to fiscal policy support, we do share them with the government, but we leave it at that because it is for the government to take into consideration and to determine and decide their inter se priority and announce measures. So this is an area on which I will not be able to comment, but I think government has provided fiscal support and fiscal relief in a very sequential and calibrated manner over the last 1.5 years. And I do believe that, I would like to believe that we have not seen the last of the government fiscal support measures. There could be many more, but again, I'm in no position to say with finality as to what is likely to happen.
And so before we wrap up, it's been a tough period for you the last 18 months and for your team working round the clock from quarantine facilities to serve the economy. What are your reflections when you look back at the time gone by, and where does that leave you with regards to the future, because the virus is still out there?
You see, the life of a central banker is never dull. There is never a dull moment because there are challenges emanating, almost, at regular intervals. But I must say that the entire team in the Reserve Bank of India has worked, notwithstanding the challenges and the restrictions of lockdown. I think throughout the pandemic, right from the beginning, our teams in the RBI, the core team in RBI, people have worked very hard. So it has been a team effort, and we always try our best. We always make our best endeavor to remain prepared to deal with any emerging challenges, identify the emerging challenges, and be ready to deal with them in a proactive manner. And that will be our approach even going forward.
And would we see you continuing to be at the helm to oversee India's monetary policy execution, sir, as your term comes for review in December?
I don't know. Not for me to say. Not for me to comment on that.
Okay. All right, Governor. We leave it at that, sir. Thank you very much for patiently answering all our questions. Thank you very much for the CNBC exclusive.
And thank you very much for also inviting and having me here. Thank you.